Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, there's a little rumour that Jonathan Frakes has been approached to direct Star Trek 4, the new Trek 4, I should say, because there's already a Star Trek 4, of course, Star Trek 4 The Voyage Home. But this kind of reeks of desperation. I'm trying not to be nasty, but at this point, come on, people. This film was announced in 2016, I think, when Beyond was being released, and they're like, we're going to do a fourth film, and it's going to be about Baby Kirk and Daddy Kirk, and it's going to have Hemsworth and Chris Pine, and, you know, turns out it was a really bad idea, and I'm glad it didn't happen. He basically was pulled out of an attempted transporter pattern from an attempted transport out, which didn't happen in the film. It was ridiculous, so I'm kind of glad they didn't go with it. And there were these other attempts where they had different directors lined up and they couldn't get the funding, and the people walked because they can't just sit around on the hope of a film being made. They've got to actually work and move on to the next project. So we had a female director leave, we had a male director leave. And now no one seems to want to do it because it's kind of cursed now. It's failed so many times to get up and going that they're sort of turning to Jonathan Frakes, who he's a good director. I mean, he's not a bad director. He's directed a lot of Star Trek. For some reason, he's broken the mold where he's a white male and he's allowed to direct Star Trek, because they sort of don't like that anymore. They are very focused on having people of colour or women that they can say, hey, look, our directors are. And some of the male directors who had been working on some of the other shows, that was sort of notable, weren't getting the work that they sort of were expecting from the new series and the new era of Star Trek, which seems very fair. But Jonathan Frakes never seemed to be affected by that, possibly because he was one of the main cast of Next Gen, and they had to be nice to him with the directing in order to get him back for film roles. So they were smart enough to think advance, because had they burned him on some directing jobs earlier on, he probably wouldn't have come back, and they would have needed him for like Picard season 3. So they at least were thinking in advance with that. And I'm not saying they don't have any white male directors or anything. It's just they're very much trying to create an image of only being created and produced by females and people of colour, which doesn't do much more than alienate white males, which is a large chunk of the audience. So I'm not quite sure. I know they're attracting some people who you know, want an alternative from, you know, the traditional Hollywood sort of stuff. But I don't think they're achieving as much as they think with that. But getting Jonathan Frakes in, he's a name, he's got a good reputation, he's done both original Star Trek and... Did he direct the original Star Trek episodes? I think he worked on Voyager and Deep Space Nine. I don't think he... Oh, he must have done at least one Next Gen, because they learned how to direct on that show. The actors got opportunities to actually direct episodes. And I think the only person who was outright turned down was Garrett Wang. He wanted to direct and they just said no, just like they were really racist towards him. I don't know why. They wouldn't give him the character promotion. They wouldn't give him anything he asked for. They basically said no, be quiet, be happy you're, you know, here, was sort of the attitude I think he got. Although he's too classy to say that outright in his interviews, I don't think he's actually said what I think was happening on that show. But we won't go there, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, Jonathan Frakes apparently is rumoured to be directing the new film, and it seems like they're just scared it's never going to happen, and they just need a safe bet, someone that's going to be around, they can always call on, because he's going to be there working on the other Star Trek shows, either as an actor or as a director, so they should be able to tap him. He's not going to run off on other projects. I think it's sort of more of a security blanket. If they're doing it, proposing it, or have mentioned it or brought it up, I don't know. Could just be a rumour. But supposedly there were some articles, I didn't read them, I probably should have before this, but they didn't seem like official. They just seemed like rumours and gossip, so I sort of left them. But it's interesting. He wouldn't do a bad job, and it might help it happening. He's not a huge name director that's going to cost a lot of money. And like I said, he's already sort of enmeshed in the universe on both sides of the camera. So not the dumbest move, but I just thought it was interesting. I want to comment on it. And if I got anything wrong, let's point out in the articles, because it's an official article, but I couldn't see anything on Trek Movie or any of the bigger sites, so I figured it's just a rumour at this point. But often a lot of those things that are true do filter out through those sites first before they get the official announcements and so forth. But it doesn't matter who they ask to direct the film, if because there's also a rumour that they're asking J.J. Abrams to come back, because that's one solution, because he's a name. If they can get him back, they might be able to get the funding from someone, because that's the problem. They don't have the funding. If they don't get the funding for this movie, it doesn't matter who they ask to direct. It's still not going to happen. And because the last film didn't make money, and there is a perception in the public that the fans don't really like the new Star Trek show, and it's more of a modest success with general science fiction fans, and the real fans don't really embrace it like the older shows. I think that is something that's real and is sort of known now. And that's part of the reason why that film hasn't gotten off the ground, aside from the fact that none of those films really made much money. When you look at the budgets, and when you look at how much the original films cost versus how much they made, the Star Trek 1 and Star Trek 4 are way more successful than any of the new Trek films. And if you add for inflation, they pretty much made the same amount of money as the most successful of those three films. But yeah, I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I just thought that was interesting. There's a little bit of a rumour and a bit of gossip. Who knows where it's going to go.